And away we go. Now, I don't know why, and I won't get into this too deeply. I had a thought of, I have a thought of think about something in regards to the people who have wronged me for, well, mostly for years. However, there's been a few that have wronged me quite recently, and it's not that I would forgive them, which I would do anyway. It's also the fact that there are people in this world that they either don't know what they're doing, they don't know what they're talking about, nor would they ever be expected to know a lot of things about anything that goes on in today's world. I'm no different. Even if I have the access and I'm in the habit of looking up news stories to keep myself informed with whatever goes on in the world, there's always going to be something that I just don't know about. And it's okay to not know everything. What is not okay is to not taking the effort to get an understanding, roughly, of anything that is heavily impacted and involved in your day-to-day life. Like, if you're working in the tech industry, you can't just not look up news stories about what's going on in the tech industry. Or if you're in the performing arts sector, you can't just not look up news stories about famous actors winning awards and changes to audition processes, something like that. Stories that's relevant to not just your way of life, but also your profession which you are working in. And again, you don't have to know everything. It is at least worth having an understanding of what you're getting yourself into. And I will leave it at that. Not because this is longer than I expect it to be. That is pretty much all the information that is to be said, and is worth noting. So with that being said, let's see what me, Risk, or Eric have sent in the podcast group chat for us to look at and say, what are they doing there? They're not supposed to be there. And just think about how life has come to this moment. So, Risk 11 has sent a screenshot from Twitter X, highlighting a Twitter X post by the account Visegrad24 at Visegrad24. The post reads, APPF, the EU regulator responsible for overseeing European parties, has moved to ban the Europe of Sovereign Nations Party, the group founded by Germany's AfD. In a 300-page letter, APPF cited evidence such as court rulings against members, social media posts, and anti-LGBT statements that it says do not uphold EU values. If the Brussels watchdog is successful, the ESN group could lose its EU funding and be banned as a political party. And then Risk 11, not directly to the screenshot he sent a text message straight after saying, they're silencing conservatives. Well, that's one way of looking at it. The way I would look at it is simply the fact that I'm not saying that ESN aren't any better of any political groupings in the European Union, nor will I excuse any of the wrongdoings by members of the Europe of Sovereign Nations Party. What I would say is, if you're wanting to push ideas that you believe will benefit majority of people's lives, then surely you're entitled to propose whatever ideas you want to propose to ensure that life for everyone is better than it is right now. Of course, don't think it'll be easy. And don't think that everyone is going to be on board with whatever ideas or proposals that you have. There's going to be people that will look at these ideas, and they will spot particular flaws or empty black holes or missing context that is certainly worth addressing. And again, it is important that if there are missing context or concerns, it is important that they are to be made aware of. How I see this, the APPF uh, making proposals or making strategies to strip away EU fundings for the ESN, it seems like to me it's simply a way of silencing and eliminating the opposition. Not that I'm defending the ESN, to get rid of a group of people who are strongly critical of a particular leader's ideas or proposals is it's not just a sign that whoever's in power right now is desperate for validation and want to be proven right on their ideas. It is also an attempt to not be challenged on the ideas that's being proposed. And this could apply anywhere else. Like, for example, uh, in Russia, Putin has been president for who knows how many years, and of course I will say this, that even when there's a lot of people in Russia that approve of Putin in regards to what he's doing in Russia, I've also heard for a while that a lot of Putin's opponents have been challenged themselves, much more than needs to be. And to some extent, there's a few, I know one of them, well known, is no longer alive, unfortunately. I say rest in peace to that guy. Whilst even when there's oppositions that may have criticisms that not everyone will be on board with, it is worth having something to be challenged against to ensure that you're hot on your heels and you are prepared to provide any clear explanation or or clarify any misunderstandings to whatever viewpoints someone has. Now, so back to the screenshot that Risk 11 had sent about APPF making moves to take away ESN's EU funding. I don't see this as a way of eliminating controversial viewpoints or ideals, even if there's a lot of people that disagree with them. And it's okay to not agree with whatever party's ideas might be or execution. And in fact, I do know people that would certainly be against the ideas and proposals or even viewpoints or opinions made by members of the ESN. And again, that's okay to express such opinions and concerns. Now, in regards to EU values, even when the post in question does state that EU values is supporting the LGBT community and, well, actually that's something about not being hateful on social media and also, well, I don't know what else it says. All it says is something about anything anti-LGBT made by ESN members. If that's the values of the EU by some people, that is their opinion. That's not to say that everyone has the same viewpoint on what EU values are. It's going to differ what people consider values of the European Union. Even in writing, if those are the exact values of the European Union, I don't think taking away EU funding for a political grouping whose members have expressed statements and opinions that quote unquote goes against EU values is even going to neither address the issue at hand or even eliminate the threats to democracy, which people say that is threatening how people get their ideas across and propose new legislation for laws to be passed, which other people within the European Union need to follow. You can take funding away from political parties, you can suspend members of any given parliament. In fact, to some extent, and I do not want to see this with anyone, there could be a point where some politicians could be unalived out of the blue somehow. No rhyme, no reason. They're unalived. They're out of this world. No matter how many of these things happen, how often they happen, and to how many people it extends to, the one thing that doesn't go away is the opinions, the perspectives, and the values of said people, who people will strongly disagree with, even if it's against the LGBT community, or certainly against abortion, or even values that go against raising our taxes to fund public services. People are going to have opinions on a lot of things. And of course, they're certainly not going to agree with it. What I'm saying is, don't think taking away funding for political parties, suspending members, or even getting rid of them in the physical plane of the planet is going to resolve the problems which you're saying exists in government. You're just taking away the front men or women that's pushing these ideas forward. There's always going to be someone else that's going to take that place to push the same exact ideas which you're saying are a threat to democracy, are harmful to individuals, and even a threat to the institutions that exist in today's world. I'm not going to argue with taking away EU fundings for political parties. Don't think that doing so is going to change anything, nor will reduce the severity of the situation that you're saying is a problem. People are going to find workarounds to ensure that even with limited funding, limited reach, their messages and their ideals, they will continue to spread like wildfire, and everyone is going to know whether it's right or whether it's incorrect about the perspectives of how people view the world, the issues that exist, and how people should take into their own hands to handle whatever situations exist in today's world. I'll leave it at that. And that is all that's been sent into the podcast group chat since the last time I recorded a podcast episode. With that all being said, let's get right into the news. CNN files lawsuit against Perplexity alleging unlawful content distribution. On Thursday, CNN filed a lawsuit in the United States District Court in the Southern District of New York, accusing Perplexity of unlawfully scraping more than 17,000 stories, photos, videos, and other content to train its products. Licensing negotiations between CNN and Perplexity collapsed last year over unresolved terms after talks failed. The network blocked Perplexity's scraping bot from accessing its content. In the 54-page complaint, CNN alleges Perplexity falsely advertised that users could skip extra steps in clicks to access news and falsely promoted its Comet Plus tier as providing CNN's premium content. As the first television network to file an AI copyright lawsuit, CNN joined publishers like the New York Times in seeking statutory damages and a court order barring Perplexity from using its content. Since ChatGPT's 2022 launch, publishers have pursued divergent strategies. News Corp, the New York Times, and the Chicago Tribune sued Perplexity, while Gannett, Time, and Le Monde signed licensing deals with the company. To be honest, I never thought broadcasters and news outlets would ever make deals with AI companies and use the content from their services to train AI bots to do whatever these chatbots or artificial intelligence agents are doing today. Yet here we are. And now, as we've seen with CNN, these news outlets, if not now, eventually they will pay the price for allowing AI bots to use their content to not just train the AI agents, but also get themselves in a legal pickle where it is hard to tell if there was permission given for this content or that content made by said broadcaster or news outlet to be promoted by the said AI agent. Whilst there is currently discussions about what laws should be put in place in regards to AI and to what extent AI is allowed or not allowed to do whatever that's been outlined, there is no good coming out of AI bots if if you're going to allow it to extract whatever content you have to the AI's liking to train its model. And if this isn't a lesson for other broadcasters and news outlets on what they shouldn't do, I don't know what is. And if they knew about it, yet done it anyway, they only had it coming, and they only have themselves to blame. Indeed, they do. Key inflation measure rises by most in 3 years in April as gasoline prices spike. On Thursday, the Commerce Department reported the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index rose 3.8% annually in April, the highest rate in nearly 3 years under the new Federal Reserve Chief Kevin Warsh. Inflation is flaring largely due to the Iran war's impact on energy prices, creating a major challenge for Warsh as he steps into the Federal Reserve role. Consumers took their foot off the pedal, with spending rising 0.5% in April, a retreat from the 1% jump recorded the month before as Americans face rising costs. CME FedWatch data shows a 40% probability of a Federal Reserve rate hike in December, up to 3% in June, as some economists pencil in potential increases later this year. President Trump has expressed eagerness from the Federal Reserve to lower borrowing costs for consumers and businesses, complicating Warsh's challenge to balance growth with curbing inflation. Well, in terms of the latter, I can't argue with that. As much as we want to achieve ideals with low inflation and maximizing growth, there's going to be a trade-off. Whilst I have my ideals on wanting to ensure that prices don't go higher, doesn't get more expensive, which a lot of people want, there's no doubt about that. It's not as easy to bring down inflation and maximizing economic growth. There's going to be trade-offs, there are going to be sacrifices, and someone is going to get the sack. Not always, however, at some point someone's going to get sacked from a position at any point in this economic disaster. Something. So I will end off concluding saying I'm not going to address the elephant in the room that is somewhere in the Middle East and a resource that is currently in high demand and prices for said resource is rising so high we question how are we able to afford any of this? Surely, there's going to have to be someone in whatever position involved in these crossfires. They're going to say enough is enough. Something has to be done. We are so desperate right now, we want something to be done immediately. And it will come to that. The question is, how long will it be until someone somewhere in the world who have the ability to make a difference for the better in reducing inflation, reducing the cost of oil, and reducing other costs as well, if they have the power to do that, how long are they willing to wait until eventually they get desperate enough to actually do something? It could be a couple months, maybe a couple years. One thing is for sure, at the latest, in my opinion, it's not guaranteed, it could be done as late as the second half of the next decade. That's the latest. It should be concluded. Somewhere in the latter stages of in the latter years of the next decade is the latest, I'd assume. Whatever is going on in the Middle East right now with Iran, the oil, and lives being lost, which is very awful. Surely something is going to be sorted, settled, negotiated, and we can all live our lives mostly in peace. That's what we all want. However, it takes time and patience to get to that point. Quebec says 21,500 social housing units need renovations. Roughly 21,500 social housing units across Quebec are in a state of disrepair, representing nearly one-third of the province's total stock of about 74,000 units. The Quebec Housing Authority grades complexes on a scale from A to E, with units receiving a D or E rating classified as being in very poor condition, requiring repairs exceeding 15% of their replacement value. Nearly $3.6 billion has been set aside until 2028 to renovate housing, though about $1.3 billion has already been allocated or spent by the Quebec Housing Authority. Statistics show 85.7% of units in Laval were in poor condition in 2023, while between 40 and 53% of housing stock in Mont, the eastern townships, and Lunadi requires renovations, although the percentage of units in poor conditions fell to 34.2% by 2026. The Quebec Housing Authority requires more than $1.079 billion to renovate the remaining 1,445 buildings. Seems like Quebec are in quite a hassle to make sure that all of the accommodation in the city is up to code and up to the standards that is required, not just by law, but also for the sake for one's health and safety. It is anyone's guess, for anyone that's not from Canada or somewhere, or anyone that's not from Quebec, how much money does the local Quebec council or government receive each year or each month, depending on how often people in Quebec pay their taxes, and the allocations of whatever money they have in their combined budget to be allocated to particular services and long-term investments, funds, or major projects within the city. I'm not too sure on that, and I'm sure anyone that's not from Canada or Quebec would know either, and that's okay. What I will say is, hopefully, whoever is in charge of Quebec housing, they'll find a way to not just renovate all of our homes to the standard that needs to be met, but also renovate as many of their homes that does need renovating in time for whenever their next local election is up for. And yeah, that's about it. Surely they'll find a way, even if there are obstacles, there's going to be a solution at some point. I'm just not going to know about it because, well, who knows when it's the next time I'll hear this story. Exactly. Steven Spielberg talks aliens in Disclosure Day final trailer. Alright, the Spielberg is back. Universal Pictures released the final trailer for Disclosure Day on Wednesday, with director Steven Spielberg narrating his belief in extraterrestrial life as tickets went on sale for the June 12th release. Spielberg's return to sci-fi comes as the Pentagon released declassified UAP documents and Navy pilot footage, with the director saying the current cultural moment directly inspired the film, echoing 1977's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Spielberg stated, "I am much more inclined now that I was when I made Close Encounters to really believe that we're not the only intelligent civilization in the universe." Emily Blunt plays a Kansas City meteorologist channeling alien language, Josh O'Connor portrays a government whistleblower. Critics hailed the film as Spielberg's finest work in 20 years. Slash Films Bill Breyer praised Emily Blunt's most accomplished performance and John Williams' best score in years, while Tessa Smith called it thrilling, funny, deeply emotional, and impeccably acted. The trailer revealed aliens on screen for the first time, bearing striking resemblance to Close Encounters creatures alongside crop circles, Area 51 references, and unnaturally staring animals, though the entire third act remains hidden from marketing with the logline, "The truth belongs to 7 billion people." Okay then. So, like I said, the myth, the legend himself, Steven Spielberg, is back to directing iconic films like he always does. And of course, like his previous films, it is a success, and everyone's talking so positively about it. I don't know who wouldn't talk so positively about a Steven Spielberg film. So now, in regards to the film, I don't know, I haven't seen it yet. Will I see it? I'll have to think on that. I have a lot of things going on in my life. Nonetheless, from what I've heard, it sounds pretty good. Of course, it may not. I don't believe the impact of this film will ever reach the same heights as other films previously directed by Steven Spielberg. Nonetheless, it is a film by Steven Spielberg, which, like previous projects, has made an impact and has gotten a lot of positive press. Not because of the name Steven Spielberg, also the visuals, the characters, the dialogue, the context, and even the key moments in the story that draws people in. And now I'm asking myself, would I say these exact words for any film if it's so good with any other film by any other director? It's debatable, nonetheless. Gotta give people a space and a platform to showcase their artwork in whatever and however way they can. And that is it for the episode.